Get things rolling. Okay. All right. Welcome to Das Won't Hunt. I'm Xiao Pierre Ruth with Information Week. And this episode, we are taking a look at the cloud you want versus the cloud you need. As with many technologies, there's often a kind of a wide range and breadth of options and features and ways that organizations, enterprises can go with the resources that they make use of, but whether or not that actually makes sense is a whole other story. So to break down this particular topic, we've brought together, again, another great fine panel of folks. We have Marcus Merrell, Principal Tech Advisor at Sauce Labs, Anuj
Hello.
Kapur, CEO of CloudBees, Bina Khimani, Chief Product Officer and Chief Revenue Officer at Kinesis Network, Richard Munro, Business Value Lead with VMware Cloud Foundation Division. All of you, thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you.
It's great to be here.
Good to be here.
All right. Again, talking about the cloud you want versus the cloud you need. Enterprises, probably are wrangling, between the C-suites and the actual folks who have to actually manage these things, about what they can do, what they should do, where they should kind of focus their resources and look at their return on investment. So, Marcus, are enterprises now really able to tailor the cloud resources that they have to fit their actual operational needs?
I believe they are able to, yeah. Whether or not people are actually doing it or not, maybe a different story. But I think that the amount of tooling that is now available, both from the native cloud providers like Amazon, Google, and Microsoft, as well as people's ability and familiarity with it. And now that the cloud is sort of maturing into something that we actually do use every single day, and every company is speaking cloud, we have now a bunch of history that will allow us to predict the future with our own usage and the way our users are using our products, so that we have observability, we have tooling, we have history. So we're now able to put all these things together and manage things the way we've not been able to manage them in the first, like 07, 08, when we were first sort of playing around. Like, we're able to make statements now, like, if you make a change to your configuration inside the console, that's now tech debt. You need to go reinforce into your infrastructure as code. So we now have that tooling and that understanding and the industry-wide knowledge that we're able to bring to bear to this topic. So I think we're able to. Whether or not we actually do it, another question.
Gotcha. Well, hopefully we'll get back to that question. But thank you for your thoughts on that. Bina, have cloud costs become more manageable? I definitely know that, the early days, as with any new technology, the upfront, like cost of it, sticker shock, but have the costs become more manageable in recent years?
So that's a fantastic question. And cloud cost, in my mind, is a shared responsibility. So cloud service providers are providing the tools to make sure that these customers can set the right guardrails for optimizing the cost, and they don't get a surprise. It doesn't break their budget. At the same time, customers need to implement those best practices, those business processes, as well as utilize those tools to be able to do that. And what happens is that a lot of times, even with all this, there are so many new companies coming in, and they are trying to train a model, say, for genomic sequencing. And the infrastructure budget, they don't plan for to the extent that requires to train the model or to even run the model. So there are newer companies who are getting surprises, but it's just because they didn't think that the compute bill can be so intense while they are working with the generative AI workloads. But at the same time, fundamentally, there are, the customers need to think about, how do I set the business processes so that not anybody can just, turn on the water tap or electricity switch and never turn it off, and suddenly they get a surprising bill. They really need to set the right guardrails and make sure that right people are accountable for driving the right behavior.
Gotcha. Great. Thank you very much for your insight on that. All right, Anuj, how has cloud usage scaled in recent years?
Yeah, absolutely. So, the way we look at it is as a function of global GDP and global IT. So just to give you a perspective as to how things are likely to play out over the next 12 months, I think global GDP is forecast to grow 2.7%. Gartner, which is really sort of the formidable authority on IT spend, says that IT spend is actually going to grow 9.3%. So that's a healthy multiple on global GDP. Usually the multiple is about 100%. 9.3, I think, represents the excitement that folks feel around generative AI and the investments that are happening. And then when you look at cloud forecasts, right? So we're just in December, so all the major public cloud providers have reported their Q3 forecasts, their Q3 numbers, their Q4 forecasts, and the Q3 numbers grew 23% year on year. And the scale of this is actually staggering when you look at AWS. So AWS in 2013 was $3 billion in run rate. This year, it's going to be $100 billion run rate. And that is significantly greater than SaaS, because SaaS is the other sort of proxy we use for public cloud spend, which is Salesforce in 2013 was about $3 billion in run rate, and Salesforce this year is going to be closer to 35 or 36, maybe even 39. But that's as a result of significant acquisitions. AWS, in terms of public cloud, is a pure play proxy because they haven't acquired their way into that growth. So that's actually very exciting with regards to, I think, as a proxy for what cloud can represent. But I think most market participants still continue to believe that cloud is a modest share of global IT, and global IT is starting to approach 5 trillion. So in the context of where we are and all the money that is spent on people, process, technology to actually get the tech industry to where it is, IT as a function of global GDP is still averaging around 5%, right? Global GDP is about 100 trillion, and IT is a small fraction of that. And cloud is obviously an emerging growth category, but still a small share of global IT spend. So I think we've come a long way, but I think the future is actually more exciting, as evidenced by just the earnings commentary from Hawk Tan at Broadcom.
Gotcha. Thank you much for the insight. It's just the scale is staggering, and I guess even going to become even more monumental as you're pointing out. Okay, Richard, are more organizations cloud first or becoming cloud first from your perspective?
Yeah, cloud first. So I think firstly, fantastic comments from the other panelists. I think cloud first is a really, really interesting term, because what I always immediately get into is, what do we mean here? Right? Do we mean, are you referring to the hyperscaler public cloud and the associated services? Are you referring to SaaS consumption services, right? And actually, at its core, what people have always tried to seek is the ability to leverage a cloud operating model. So if we go back in time, IT was so slow, couldn't deliver. Businesses started moving really fast and overtaking the capability of IT. Remember, it was shadow IT, first of all. There was no cloud first initiative. People went to public clouds because they could just get things done. And the real question that's been in existence in the market ever since then is, I want that, but can I also have it privately? So there's two major trends that have actually gone on. We've seen the growth in scale as people are learning, their expertise is improving, that we got fantastic solutions that help them take advantage of these hyperscale public native services, right? So, and the challenge statements around compliance, cost, financial transparency, they tend to come from when people are trying to take their data and bring it to those cloud and AI services. If you're doing everything net new, it tends to be a very different paradigm. But when you bring your data to cloud and AI services, right, that can come with some challenges. The other trend that has accelerated dramatically in the past couple of years, and is certainly where we at Broadcom are focused, is you can actually also bring cloud and AI to your data. So we've developed and evolved the ability to deliver a cloud operating model, which is what I think cloud is, right? We've actually evolved our capabilities to bring that privately as well. And as we look at the growth of workloads, particularly around AI and the brand new challenges that we're all struggling with that, we look at the growth and extension in part due to AI around edge use cases, etc. What we actually see is that there is a pattern requirement for that cloud operating model in multiple locations, and privately is a big piece of the missing puzzle that people have wanted for a long time and is now deliverable. It's interesting that I think it was US Federal who first came up with cloud first as a concept. They changed, I think 2018, 2019 to cloud smart, which is basically saying, no, it's not about cloud first. You don't just go headlong in, right? We're seeing multiple surveys that show over 80% of companies expecting some level of repatriation. I don't think that saying public cloud is a failure. I think that's saying my expectations of what I could do, how I could move my workloads, my data, the outcomes that I can expect from going cloud first, all in, throw it all there. That was a wrong move. Cloud smart is about saying, let's think about it. What am I actually trying to achieve? Where's my best place to achieve it? And is the right technology available? So we're seeing, I think organizations are moving to cloud. I think it's a highly desirable operating model. I think we shouldn't think that that is only available from a hyperscaler public cloud service.
Gotcha. And thank you very much for that. Really appreciate your insights. And it's funny because it might be a little bit of a jump, but I was at a conference yesterday, AI focused, not cloud focused, but the idea of speaking about something being insert name enabled in terms of the technology, it's this particular panel, they were talking about, something becomes a thing when people are talking about that less, as opposed to trying to put that up front to say that, we're enabled with this particular technology. It's like, it's really fully embraced when it's just there. It's just part of the landscape. So I can definitely, interesting thoughts, definitely interesting thoughts. Okay. All right. Now for all of you, of course, before just diving into saying like, yes, let's all make use of the cloud, there can be potential stumbling blocks, roadblocks, things that kind of might have to, require hitting a pause button. Particular when we talk about regulation, regulated industries and compliance, and whether or not certain things are allowed to exist in the cloud or not. So from your perspectives, all of you, how is, the need for compliance, particularly in more regulated industries, influenced use of the cloud, and have regulators and the folks who are kind of really the backbone and the spine of the cloud kind of, have they started to reach some kind of like détente, place of equilibrium and understanding about like, well, regulators need this, cloud operators want to do this. Have we started to, how's this been sorting out from any of your perspectives?
I feel like we were headed towards the daytime until generative AI became everywhere and started slurping up all the data and making things complicated. I'm curious to hear what my panelists think about that.
I think AI is very much a changing definition. So I think there's been tremendous strides in getting compliance that was never possible in public cloud services, right? And that there's loads of that's been fixed, but it's still a complicated issue because you can have a badge, but it's not about whether there's a badge that says, hey, this can be certified against something. It's about what am I putting there? What processes have I got? Can I interface my processes with your process? So it's always been a complex area. The interesting thing with AI is that for AI, the potential benefits are huge, right? We all know it. Forget the hype cycle because we know the potential benefits. This is about extracting value from data, something that's always been a highly desired outcome, something that's always been hard. But now with AI and particularly generative AI, our ability to do that has grown. So the potential benefits are huge, but so are the potential risks. So we have a very fluid, we've got a fast moving landscape of AI-based technologies that we don't fully understand yet. Across multiple vendors, across open source, proprietary models, and so on. We have a regulatory regime that's struggling to keep up because it needs to understand as well. And we also have this fundamental notion that if we get value out of this data, then that's my value, and I need to make sure that that's, it's my data, so I need to make sure it's my value. So ironically, what we're seeing with private AI is it's actually leading quite the renaissance in saying, I want to go back privately again, because whilst there are fantastic AI services in the public cloud, there's a whole bunch of very specific benefits around acceleration of AI projects, around cost savings, etc., that could be leveraged from bringing AI technologies across any vendor and actually bringing them to your data. But if you want that to run efficiently, you need really strong automation, you need really high performance, you need resource scheduling across capacity, et cetera, et cetera. What does that mean? It means you need a private cloud. So the two things are kind of interlinked. You have to evolve your capability to a private cloud, and that gives you the ability to have this private AI drive as well.
Yeah, that's definitely an evolving industry and highly disrupted right now with the generative AI, and totally agree with what Marcus and Richard said. I do believe that, in the traditional sense, like in healthcare industry, in finance industry, generally highly regulated industries, earlier customers had to continuously focus on catching up with the compliances versus cloud service providers. They inherently provide the systems and the tools, and they are compliant within almost like first 90 days or first few months. So that makes it easy for regulator industries. And they also provide, like Azure has a compliance manager or audit manager, AWS has one too. So cloud service providers provide the tools to make it compliant. But at the same time, with these new issues, right, especially related to data sovereignty, many companies are finding, like we are working with a client in Costa Rica, and there is no any public cloud service providers region or availability zone there. So in this case, how they can keep the data within Costa Rica, that's where companies like us come into picture, and we can pull together their own fragmented compute, idle compute, and make it available to them. So we are seeing that it is changing while the traditional, all the compliance needs are there. Also, another thing to think about is that this is always a catch-up game, because it's very regional. Different countries and different regions will keep publishing different compliance requirements, and companies and the cloud service providers have to continuously try to catch up. And now a lot of these things that are coming up that customers didn't even think about, and even governments are figuring out how to regulate it. And while they are figuring out how to regulate it, they are also thinking about customers who are already on cloud. How do we make sure that we don't disrupt their businesses? So both regulators are also making sure that they are accommodative of the technological evolution. At the same time, cloud service providers and customers are also, making sure that they can get there in a least disruptive way. And that's where, with the edge technology, with data sovereignty, and especially in the places where it's really hard to get public cloud service, a lot of things are being disrupted in different way from private clouds and many other ways.
Yeah, I'll add two comments. It's a fascinating topic, and I think the comments are very spot on. But there's the old adage, right? Everyone's got a plan until you get punched in the face. So I 100% agree with Marcus, which is probably until October 22, which was a month before GPT came out. We had found this detente between pre-COVID, this notion of shared responsibility, right? And I use security as a vector to actually encapsulate the problem statement between what companies want, what vendors want, what regulators want, and what consumers want. So up until then, the view was that we needed to tread carefully in regulated industries. COVID came, you couldn't get access to private data centers. And that basically, created an acceleration of areas and of processes that historically were very on-prem centric. Think call centers, right? And call center operators. So all of a sudden, what we said is compliance matters, data security matters, privacy matters, regulation matters, but not if there's a 5 Sigma event. And then we sort of wound that back and stabilized and found that equilibrium, right? The plane sort of found its altitude, and then GPT came. And now it's exactly what Bina said, which is you've got the needs of vendors, you've got the existing vendors, cloud vendors. The models are sort of mixing between open source, what Meta wants, and proprietary, what OpenAI has. There's a debate as to which is the right model for you as an enterprise. There's a debate as to what the right cloud provider is, whether it's actually a cloud provider or an on-prem provider for this primary issue of data gravity. And the hesitation that CIOs had, which is once they put their data in a public cloud environment, they're never getting it back because of egress charges, right? And only Google was the one to actually float the fact that, egress charges and repatriation would not be a tax. But I think a lot of CIOs believe the more data that was in the public cloud, the more they would never actually get out of it. Now you introduce AI, and everyone's being told that the data you have, the proprietary data you have on your core business processes is the only sustainable differentiation you have. Well, most of that happens to be on-prem. And there's this huge gravitational pull to say, well, if you want to actually take advantage of everything that's going on in AI and to be able to train the models you need access to that data. But that data was on-prem for a reason. There's a privacy requirement, there's a regulatory requirement, there's an ownership requirement, there is a tenure requirement. And I think every company is trying to actually deal with all those things at once while still trying to prove to their shareholders that they're forward-leaning in terms of investments in AI because you can't afford to fall behind. And so I think it's a very complex soup right now that enterprises are having to navigate. And to Bina's point, The regulators are sitting there in the background saying, should we over-regulate or under-regulate? You've seen what Europe has done. You've seen what the US has done. You've got corporation incentives in there. And then on top of that, we obviously have the new administration that's going to put the Doge effect on everything to say, let's regulate lightly, not heavily. So it'll be a very interesting year in 2025.
Thank you for that. And I'm going to
not
comment on Doge
every day.
Personally.
Appreciate you giving me this forum.
Thank you. I appreciate all your great thoughts on that. I'm going to try to do my best to try to combine the last 4 questions into one for the sake of time, and try to get. I will not talk about Doge. Anyway, all right. So, I guess back to the topic of this conversation. The cloud you want versus the cloud you need. How have the ambitions of organizations with cloud really kind of compared, their operational, needs versus, like, okay, we're trying to do this, but we want to do that. And in that thinking, they're trying to be competitive. Do we want to? Is there a want to try and get to this kind of ubiquitous cloud first world that is something that was painted in the past sometimes, but maybe not as spoken about as much, where absolutely everything's going to be in the cloud. So I'm just trying to get a sense of what is the ambition that we seem to be seeing from organizations about how they want to use the cloud versus the resources that are there, the operational actual needs. Versus those kinds of ambitions and some of the loftier dreams that have been in the background.
I think that the organizations are really focused on, how do I focus on my core business? How do I differentiate in my core business? And this is infrastructure management, and everything related to it is something that is not their core priority. So we see, and we focus on optimization. So we see a lot of businesses who are focused on financial trading algorithms and building best algorithm for that, on genomic sequencing and finding the cure for a rare disease, or manufacturing industry that are trying to anticipate every outage and every part that they need to replace. So we see that businesses are focused on their core business, and this is something that is a necessity and not core focus. And as a result, what happens is that they are all the operational aspect, especially the optimization and efficiency, that is an afterthought. And whenever they get to it, they are not experts into this. So they have never done like cloud migration. They have not done refactoring. They have not done optimization, and they haven't even evolved their business processes for efficiency. So when they try to do that for the first time, they are learning and they are making mistakes. So we are seeing that companies want to focus on their core business, and they want to not worry about the infrastructure. That's why they like cloud. They believe that cloud will take care of all the operational issues. But at the same time, it doesn't work like that. You just lift and shift and turn off your data center doesn't mean all the problems are solved. You need to utilize the latest services. You need to modernize. You need to, set the right swim lanes and guardrails and business processes where right behavior is rewarded. And that's where I believe that the challenges come, that customers want to continue to focus on cloud and on their core business and use cloud as more of a backbone. And that works perfectly as long as they understand that it is not all done. That's where you need to partner with the businesses who understand and know how to do it.
I think for me, JP, look, I think we're going to get there. Right? And I like your point you made earlier, which is, eventually we'll probably just stop saying cloud, right? So, because it's just going to be the way we do things. I think the reality is that I think there's a growing appreciation that the rush to public cloud was what it was, right? There tons of benefits, but at the same time, many issues around cost, compliance, complexity. That's not gone away. That's sustained. I think I saw a survey, I think it was from Capgemini recently, that said less than 40% of execs are satisfied with the outcomes from their cloud projects. Right? So these are big numbers. I think it's about being sure of the outcome that you're after, and then being aware of what options that you actually have as an organization. As I say, I think many people have asked for private cloud for a long time, right, as an additional option, because it does simplify a lot of these things we've been talking about. And what they've been given is something that's either not private or it's not a cloud. And so, you kind of end up not asking for it. But if we think about cloud as that cloud operating model, it is possible to implement intra-organizational multi-tenancy. So you can really attribute your spend against various organizations. You can give them scalable capability that they can business justify, that they can consume in a self-service way, but with private guardrails, et cetera, et cetera. They can bring AI technologies to that data. Now, I don't mean to be doing a massive advert for private here, but most people don't understand that dynamic has changed. The technology is now there. The big challenge for organizations that are wrestling with this, how do I achieve this nirvana of running cloud everywhere? The big thing that they have to do is look at the people and process side, because the technology is now there. They can do it, and that can complement their other cloud services, be it SaaS or public. So you can deliver the same kind of benefits, but only if you make the changes around your people and process to overcome silos, to get people working to the same kind of cloud-based outcomes. So I think it's more about a focus on outcomes. I think we'll see that shift, and it'll be taking advantage of the technologies that are now available that weren't before.
Yeah, I think just to wrap it up, it's about using cloud as what it is, which is a tool and as a means to an end, it's not the destination. It's how you enable your business and how you get people thinking more about your business. People talk about cloud as though it is the nirvana, but it's really just a way to get you on the path, I think. And the more smart we can be, the more deliberate we can be about that, I think. And honestly, the same applies to generative AI. And I think that we're just now starting that conversation.
Yeah, the last thing I'd say, just in 30 seconds, there are no absolutes in technology, right? Every time something comes that's promised to be a panacea is never that, because technology is designed by human beings, and human beings tend to think in shorter term cycles than the half-life of enterprise applications that exist inside most enterprises. So yeah, I think it will continue to be a very strong gravitational pull for certain capabilities that are relevant for certain modern companies and modern applications, but agree with Richard and Marcus, which is it will continue to be a hybrid pull to the extent the unit economics favor that.
Awesome. Great. Listen, we can continue on and possibly get me to start saying things about Doge and generative AI that my bosses would want to shut me down immediately for. Listen, Anuj, Marcus, Bina, Richard, thank you so much. Appreciate you coming on to the show today.
Thank you. It was great to meet everyone else as well.
Much.
Thank you.
Great.
Thank you, GP and team. Very nice to meet you all.
Likewise.
To listen to the entire conversation, look for the Das1 Hunt podcast on Spreaker, Spotify, Amazon Music, and other popular podcast platforms.